Now, the Republican tax plan, which is basically a tax cut for the rich, is expected to pass today. I mean, I expect it to pass today. I think there's a lot of people out there that expect it to pass today because this is the one thing that they've always wanted. Now, there's a reason that this is what they want, and it comes to who's going to, or it comes down to who's going to benefit most from when this tax plan actually passes. Now, there's a new analysis out there that shows you exactly who's going to benefit, and you're not going to be surprised to find out that it's incredibly rich people. A new analysis of the Republican tax cut bill, and I'm reading from Vox here, finds that the bill would benefit the rich and corporations, multinational corporations, far more than actually previously reported, with over 80% of the gains going to the top 1%. Now, this new analysis done by the Tax Policy Center looked at the tax rates paid by individuals and corporations by the year 2027. Now, 2027 is around the time where these tax cuts for the middle class and the poor sunset. So in order to go through budget reconciliation, they had to put in a sunset provision for these bills, for these middle class tax cuts, so they could get under the budget that they need to be able to do, because otherwise it would cost too much. So the first thing they drop is, well, hey, let's just make the tax cuts for regular working people and the middle class, well, let's make those go away so we can keep the gigantic corporate tax cuts, because that's what we actually wanted to do. That's what we actually care about, tax cuts for the rich and for the giant corporations. Now, according to Vox, by 2027, more than half of all Americans, about 53%, would end up paying more taxes under the bill agreed to by the House and Senate Republicans. That year, 82.8% of the bill's benefit would go to the top 1%. Now, that is up from 62.1% under the Senate bill. So you understand, 82.8%. Most of this benefit goes to the rich, to the 1%. And you want to talk about income inequality. That's income inequality. That's making what we already have. I mean, we already have historic levels of income inequality in this nation. And this bill is going to make it worse. 82.8%. Jesus. And it's going to pass. It's going to pass. Okay? And that's the saddest thing about this, is that we have politicians that no longer represent us, that actually represent their donors. And that's the only reason this is actually going to go through. Again, this is historically unpopular for a tax bill. Most Americans don't actually want this, but the corporations do, and they're going to get their way. Now, not only this, but the analysis also finds that in the first years of the bill's implementation, when it's an across-the-board tax cut, the benefits of the law would also be heavily concentrated among the upper and middle-class Americans. So a right-winger could come along and, talk about the first part of my argument. Hey, it's going to benefit the rich after 2027. And then they could say, well, look, the benefits for the middle class, I mean, obviously they're going to have all this economic growth. They're going to be doing far better. And all the benefits, of course, or a lot of the benefits, will be located in the middle class. So any politician worth their salt, they're going to vote to reauthorize these tax cuts. I mean, they're not going to let them sunset. And anybody who does is, well, terrible at being a politician. They're never going to win re-election. You might have a point if you argue that tax increases on the middle class are incredibly unpopular. But again, they're using these tax increases to continue to fund that corporate rate. And as far as within the next 10 years, if this passes, that a lot of the benefits are going to end up going to the middle and lower classes, that's just not true. The benefits of the law would actually, again, be heavily concentrated to the upper and middle class, with nearly 2/3 of the benefit going to the richest fifth of Americans just next year. Now, before I get into more of the numbers, right, the analysis does not include an additional cost of the legislation, which has been estimated from anywhere from $1.4 trillion to nearly $2 trillion. The repeal of the individual mandate, which is also in there, which the Congressional Budget Office estimates could cause as many as 13 million fewer people to have health insurance, reducing federal spending for poor and middle-class Americans' health insurance by $338 billion over the next 10 years. So all those factors actually make it worse if you're poor or middle class. Congratulations, you're getting screwed. According to Vox, almost all provisions of the bill, with the exception of the reduction in the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%, are temporary, expiring at the end of 2025. So I kept saying 2027, actually meant 2025. One exception is the adoption of a new slower growing inflation measure to adjust tax brackets, a change that effectively raises taxes over time and helps pay for the permanent corporate rate cut. So basically what they're doing is that they're taking from you to pay for this corporate tax cut, who, again, these corporations, they actually don't plan on creating jobs with that money. Again, CEOs were asked, are you going to create jobs with this money? And they said, no. No, why would we create jobs when we could just, look, we are already in a fantastic position to create jobs. We're incredibly profitable. Our shares are excellent. The stock market is doing great. Why would we hire more? No, what we want to do is we want to make our shares worth more. So we're going to use this money to do massive stock buybacks. That's going to make our shares worth more, and that's actually also going to increase executive pay. That's what we're going to do with the money. And then they laugh and laugh all the way to the bank. Create jobs. That's a good one, man. No, give me my tax cuts. Give me my money. Give me my money. So if it's not going to create jobs, the question is, why are we going to give them money? Because the politicians are bought by lobbyists that work for those same corporations. These companies whose only concern is to make profit for their shareholders buy the politicians and say, cut my taxes so we can make more. Their only goal is to maximize profit. That's why they're more machines than anything else. You give a machine instructions and it's going to do whatever it can to be able to carry out those instructions. We gave these legal fictions, these entities, these things that don't actually exist, a mandate. And we told them, make as much money, maximize profit for the shareholders. That is your only goal. And then we set them loose. Now, originally it was supposed to work is, okay, that's fine. You make as much money as possible. What we're going to do is we're going to have responsible legislators that are going to put certain rules and regulations on corporations to make sure that they don't screw over regular people, their consumers, and they don't hurt the communities that they're supposed to serve. The only problem is, through our messed up system of money and politics, these corporations said, well, hey, wait a minute. We can game the system by buying off politicians and rig the rules in our favor so that we can, again, go back to the original instruction to maximize profit. And that's all they're going to do. And that's what this is about. This is about maximizing profit and getting as much money as they can from anywhere they can get it. And again, we've let these machines, these legal fictions, take over our political system. We've got to do something about it. Okay, back to the analysis. Thanks to the corporate provisions, the top 1% would claim, again, 82.8% of the benefit of the bill and receive an average cut of about $20,000. The top 0.1%, the richest of the rich, earning $5.1 million or more a year, will get about $148,000 back on average. So with this bill, of course, the rich make out like bandits. Thanks to stock buybacks, and basically their executives on the board, as well as lowering of the pass-through rate. So there's a lot of different ways that these shareholders can actually make a ton of money off this tax code, off this tax plan. But how does everyone else do? Not very well. A total of 53.4% of all American households would see a tax increase, and 25.2% would see a tax cut in 2027. Most Americans within the bottom fifth of the distribution, those in poverty or near poverty, would have no benefit. Or, well, not only would they not have any benefit, but they would not have any loss either. So people who are poor, you got to understand, if you want to help people in poverty, you don't mess with the tax code, because literally it has nothing to do with them. So anybody who's saying, no, cutting taxes will actually help poor people is lying to you. That's simply not true. They're either ignorant or they're lying to you. It has nothing to do with it, because poor people generally don't make enough to pay taxes. That's why they're poor. That's why we consider them to be poor. They're not actually contributing at all to the government in the form of taxation. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't want to. It's simply because they don't make enough, because they're in poverty. So cutting taxes, not an anti-poverty program. No, what a good anti-poverty program is to make sure that they can get ahead, helping them with education, job training, things like that, investment. But we don't do that in America. Instead, we focus on, well, how can we give more to the top so that it trickles down to everybody else? Again, doesn't work. It doesn't work. All right. So anyway, now, thing is, right, I said that it's these tax cuts, they're not going to benefit the poor and they're not going to hurt the poor, right? Well, that's not quite true either, because there is an angle which indirectly hurts the poor, and that's the deficits that we're creating. Again, it's going to create a $1.5 to $2 trillion deficit over the next 10 years. That is a lot of money that is no longer going to the federal government. And what's the first thing, that these Republicans, they look to when there's a deficit? They're going to cut entitlements, or so-called entitlements. You know what they call an entitlement? Because it's your money. You're entitled to it. And so that's what they're going to look to cut. Paul Ryan already said, I'm going to cut Medicare. We're going to cut Social Security. We're going to cut Medicaid for the poor. We're going to look at doing reform on food stamps, which means they're going to cut food stamps as well. A lot of this stuff actually goes to help people in poverty. Food stamps, assistance on housing. That's also going to get cut by Republican politicians. So poor people, they're going to get screwed over in this, even if the tax changes don't actually help or hurt them. It's what's going to happen to the government programs that actually help them. Now, the middle class, again, they also get hosed. Nearly 70% of Americans in the middle fifth of income distribution, earning $54,000 to $93,000 a year, would see their taxes go up, with an average tax hike of about $150. That sucks. Not a huge change, obviously, but let me tell you, can you afford, if you're within that income distribution, can you afford an extra $150? Where you actually want to pay an extra $150? I thought this was supposed to be a tax cut for the middle class. Well, it's not. It's a giant tax cut for the corporations. And it's going to go to benefit the corporations. So once these cuts vanish in 2025, at the end of 2025, everybody but the rich and corporations are going to see a tax hike. And even during the bill, you're not going to see a huge gain. If you're poor, you'll get about $60. The middle class might get about a $930 tax return on average, or a 1.6% boost in their income. So that's almost $1,000. Yay. The rich, people earning $307,000 to $730,000 a year, will get about $13,480, while the top 1% and 0.1% will get an $193,000 on average. So that's how it plays out. It's not good. If it's not obvious to you now that this whole thing is a scam, wait about 10 years for your taxes to go up. Then you'll probably notice. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.